Today on the PIO podcast, I would like to welcome Brian Murray. He's a PIO for Harris County Emergency Management in Harris County, Texas. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. I'm happy to be here.
Brian, before we jump into everything we're going to be talking about, like alerts and messages, can you give our listeners a quick overview of your role in Harris County and how your responsibilities are split between emergency management and being a PIO?
Sure. I literally wear two hats. I am the public information officer, which is, principal communications advisor to our emergency management coordinator. But I'm also the deputy emergency management coordinator. So that means I have a foot firmly in the communications world, but also in emergency management. Most of what I do is enabling the people that work in our office to do their jobs. We have two deputies and an EMC. Our job is to clear away the politics. Unfortunately, that is a feature of emergency management we're not getting away from anytime soon. But really, making sure that those folks have the resources they need to do their jobs, providing them with oversight, advice, guidance, mentorship, whatever is necessary. And then as PIO, I'm our spokesperson. I do advise our communication supervisor, but in general, I leave the running of that team to her.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk about Harris County. It is one of the largest, most complex jurisdictions in the country. How does that scale affect how your team approaches public alerts and notifications?
I'll tell you what, it's everything. You have to realize Harris County is actually larger in population than 26 states. We are the home to the largest and busiest port in the United States. We have the largest petrochemical industry in the United States, second only to Rotterdam in the world. And we have the largest medical center in the United States, in fact, the world. And we have an incredibly diverse population. So what that really means is we have a threat matrix that is just as scary as you can imagine. Not only are we subject to natural disasters, but, as we like to say here, there's not a day goes by that we don't spill something on the ground, blow something up, or burn it down. And on the days that those things don't happen, we flood it. So, we stay very busy. What that means, though, is that we have to be prepared to message on a variety of different issues at any given time, and sometimes at the same time, because you get those lovely incidents within the incidents that really challenge you. But our planning is fairly broad. It's not just a question of flooding or hurricanes, which is what most people think of. It's also, hey, we've got a hazmat spill, we have a leak, we have whatever. So it does keep us busy, and that means we have to be a lot more attentive to what's going on in our.
Real quickly, what's what you said the largest population or population larger than 26 states? What's the regional population there?
So I think if you go to our metro area, it's right about 7, almost 8 million. We've
Wow.
added 1 million people in the last 10 years just to Harris County
Wow.
because of the fact that the economy here has just been, consistently booming in Texas in general, but just in Harris County. We were the biggest destination for U-Haul for about 5 or 6 years, if I remember correctly. So we've welcomed a lot of people here, and a lot of them, it's almost frightening. They don't even know where they're moving to. I've seen people come here and they say, "What's a hurricane?" It's like, oh, hey, welcome, saddle up.
Wow. Yeah, it's a little different than a snowstorm when you're coming from up north.
Very much so. Yeah, we don't handle those well at all.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about emergency alerts. What triggers an emergency alert, a WA, in your area? What kind of things are triggering those?
I'll tell you what, as far as what we do, we don't do as much WIA alerting as you would think. I will say the number one is absolutely weather, because we do have such an active climate here. And the National Weather Service office here is just fantastic. And they do a really good job of making sure that the alerts and warnings go out steadily and as early as possible, including via WIA. I'd say that, same thing with our emergency alert system, very capable, very good. We will follow up on those occasionally if we need to. The National Weather Service may issue a flood warning, but if we're going to have to evacuate people for any reason, that's when we're going to step in on the WIA. If there's other issues, we're going to step in on that. I think the other thing you see a lot, and we don't do this at all, but the state of Texas does, lots of missing person alerts. We've got a veritable rainbow of missing person alerts, and frankly, it's almost getting unwieldy. I challenge most people to tell me what a camo alert is, not to mention what is a blue alert. So I think we're setting out a lot of alerts that don't have a whole lot of meaning, but we could talk about that a little more in a minute. And then recently, the Texas Department of Transportation has started doing WIA alerting. And what they do it for is anytime that a freeway is closed for what they're projecting is more than 4 hours, they will issue a message, and I think about a 1 or 2 mile radius of that incident to let people know that they should avoid it. So we're getting a little more crowded in our atmosphere here, but People are definitely familiar with the alerts here.
So, do you think that that creates a little fatigue when the number of them start coming out? I do know when I was in Colorado, we were doing a lot of indigenous personal alerts, and
Mhm.
those were coming out 3 4 times a day. And I know at some
Wow.
point, people would shut them off, and that can be problematic.
Yeah, and there was a Rand Corporation study that shows that Texans are the most likely to turn off emergency alerts on their devices, which is kind of troubling, to be honest with you, considering, again, the threats we face here. I think alert fatigue is almost a different thing. I think the we alerts, especially the missing person alerts, tend to be more annoyances. And again, there are getting people to shut off their alerts. Alert fatigue is a little different. I think alert fatigue is when people are bombarded with messages that don't mean anything to them, that don't require any specific action. I think you can say, yes, they get tired of getting the missing person alerts, but I don't think that's what's contributing to alert fatigue as much as it is when people are getting alerted to, an inch of rain, and when people are getting alerted that, something's going to happen, but hey, I'm not going to tell you what you need to do in that situation. I'm just telling you that there's going to be, whatever. And we don't see as much of that here. I think our office is very cognizant of that. I think most of our partners in the area are very cognizant of that. So we can minimize that. I will say that what contributes to it, and this is one of my hobby horses right now. When I got up this morning and I looked at my phone, I think I had 23 alerts sitting on my phone's
Wow.
face. And I think that's what gets confusing because now the emergency alert that's telling you that, there's a tornado warning is also competing with a buy one, get one sale at whatever shoe store that you have an account with. And I think we've done this to ourselves, but I think there's so much information out there. We have so much coming in that we've kind of created our own little mess. Yeah. That's like I said, that's my hobby horse right now.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, it does open up the door to saying, I don't want to listen to this stuff. I don't want to subscribe to it. I don't want to get the alerts unless, like you said, you're giving people specific information. I like the idea that your transportation department is putting out roadways that are going to be closed for more than 4 hours. Because if I was going to be traveling on your highway system, I would like to know that that road is going to be closed because I got to look for something alternate then, right? I mean, it would
Absolutely.
stink to get
We're famous for our traffic. And that's actually one that I fully support that one. That's come in handy a couple times.
right. So, all right. So let's jump out of that. So we've talked message fatigue. How can we balance the need to keep the public informed without overwhelming them with too many messages? I mean, especially when you have so many hands in the pot, so to speak, so many organizations that can put out those alerts.
I think part of it is let's be realistic about what people actually need alerts about. I will say between 2014 and 2017, we had 4 major flooding events in Harris County, including, Harvey, which was, just an unimaginable event. After that, we were warning people we were going to get half an inch of rain. The public had gotten so concerned about the idea they might flood, and we kind of, of course, we fed into that and probably actually inadvertently ended up causing some of that angst. Um, but when I took over communications in 19, I basically said, okay, we're done. At this point, rain is rain. And unless we're looking at substantial rainfall rates, unless we're looking at, substantial rainfall numbers, like more than 5, 6 inches, we just can't keep alerting people it's going to rain. At some point, you got to face the fact you're going to get damp. That's it. But there's not necessarily any danger in it. So I think part of that is really just okay. Do we need to send an alert on this, or do we just trust that people are catching enough weather on the way out the door watching Good Morning America that they understand that they need to take an umbrella today.
Absolutely. All right. So Harris County, one of the biggest counties in the country, population wise, is that's just mind boggling to begin with. So you're talking about you have crises that are all over the county that are going on. One time could be hazmat situation, large port. We're coming into the new year, and I just saw that France and one other country just canceled their New Year's Eve events
Yeah,
out of safety concerns. What are your thoughts about that?
it's hard. I've traveled a good bit, and we live in a very different environment here in the United States. I don't think we appreciate how cocooned we are. I don't think we appreciate how good we have it in a lot of ways. Some of the things that they fear there is something we don't really consider. They have ethnic violence on a different scale. They have nationalism on a different scale than we do. For as much as we can be concerned about our government or our country, it's nothing compared to what they deal with in some other nations. I kind of understand why they're taking that stance. I think it's tough. It's a tough call to make. We're looking at next year, we will have FIFA games here, World Cup games here.
Hmm.
And on the 4th of July alone, we sat and looked at this. We have a FIFA game at our large NRG stadium. Astros will be playing at Dyken Park. We'll have the Freedom Over Texas fireworks celebration. Oh, and by the way, it's also the 250th anniversary of the United States, and every single burg from here to the border are going to be having parades and fireworks displays. I cannot think of a worse environment to be existing in than that particular day. But you know what? We're going to do it. People are going to celebrate. People are going to enjoy it. Is there going to be some things we don't like, some things that are dangerous? Yes. Will there be messaging along those lines from different agencies? I have no doubt. But the thing is, I think Americans are we have a very big attitude. Oh, that's not going to happen to me, and they're by the grace of God. But I think we're going to power through those things. It's going to be a lot. It's going to take a lot to cancel events in this country, certainly in this county.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been going around the country. I work for Texas A&M, and I go around the country. And I've been doing training for organizations for FIFA. I mean,
Mhm.
literally all over the country. We've been delivering programs for them, and it is just mind-boggling to think of some of the foot traffic that is going to be in some very condensed areas,
Yeah,
and the crowds that come out for that, and the type of crowd, and what that entails. So it's going to be very interesting. You know, people access, just overall foot traffic and security concerns. And then 4th of July, I didn't even, it didn't even dawn on me that we're coming up to the 250th anniversary. So it's like, that is like, you're putting a pin right in the donkey's tail saying target here, you know?
absolutely. It's a lot, but again, like I said, we will power through it. We will make these things work.
All right. So how do we messaging? I know you've talked about the importance of giving people direction or giving them a call to action about what they do. What other aspects of putting out an alert message matter, like tone or length, or is there something else that needs to be considered?
I think all of those things need to be considered. I mean, you're looking at a package. The first thing we're looking at, we have to convey the seriousness of the situation. Is it something that you need to be moderately concerned about, or is this something that you need to just think about staying home? Are we putting that up front, and are we recommending protective actions that are realistic? Because honestly, on some things, you and I both know, I can tell you this is going to happen. I can tell you should take precautions, but do you really even understand what shelter in place means? So, I mean, most people don't. It's a very difficult
No.
thing. And I think at the same time you start talking about length, there's a reason why there was reluctance to extend WIA characters from 90 to 360 because people literally thought that's too much to read. As it turns out, it works. But I do think that the length of the message makes a difference because the longer it is, the more information you're going to bury past the point where people are willing to read. So I think that it's, again, I think the tone that sets the expectation of the danger. I think the length that allows you to, forces you, not even allows you to, forces you to express yourself succinctly and candidly, and then the information in there being actually usable and something that you can follow. That's the important stuff for us.
Okay, so you have, again, one of the biggest populations in a county that I've ever heard of. You also must have an extremely diverse population, and
Yes.
if I remember correctly, there was a fairly high Asian population. So how do you guys handle multilingual messaging?
And it's a real challenge. On social media, we're really good at this. I'll tell you, we do 5 language on most of our social media messages. That's English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Arabic. And those are really the top 5. I'll tell you, it was a tough one. We probably could have added, we may still at some point add French to that. As African population grows, a lot of them, their language is actually French. So we may end up adding that at some point. Social media, it's pretty easy. We can chat GPT the translation if we don't have someone who's a native speaker. And frankly, I know there's going to be errors in there somewhere, but the translations, as far as we've been able to test, are pretty good. It gets a little more difficult in some of the other languages. We are right now is set up to do English and Spanish, and you can do any other language that is Greco Roman alphabet based. symbolic languages you really can't do in we at this time, but I think that'll be changing in the next couple of years. It's frankly a technology issue. In our Ready Harris alerts, which are email, text, and phone, we do English and Spanish only. I'm almost somewhat ashamed of this. Part of the reason for that is because we get fierce kickback from people who get messages in languages they don't speak. And I've really had it with that. It's irrelevant. And we've treated it as relevant for too long. So, we've talked about this and trying to figure out how to best make this work and how to allow people to choose what language they receive messages in based on a couple of options. And that'll be some modifications we'll probably be making to our mass notification system here in the next year to allow us to do that. But we're consistently, and we also do accessible American Sign Language messaging as well as, and those messages are also adaptable to the Braille machines.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be my next question. How are you handling those other that other area of accessibility? So that I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you. How how are you handling training for your staff and putting out messaging during crisis? Are you sending them to training or are you doing in-house training? How does that work?
It's a little bit of both, honestly. We've been encouraging our folks to take the different classes that have been put up by FEMA, TEACS, the state of Texas, to really learn what it means to be a PIO. And I mean, not everyone on our staff is a spokesperson, but I think you have to understand the basics of what it is you're doing, and those classes convey that really well. The other thing is we activate our emergency operations center on average about 16 times a year. And I will tell you that 2025 was an absolute anomaly. I don't even think we hit double digits, which has never happened in the time, 15 years I've been with the office. So on the job training really has been a big part of what they get. And that and just in-house, sitting at a communications team meeting. And we have, I think, I want to say 6 people on a comms team. Teach them how to write a Ready Harris alert. Teach them how to write for social media. Explain to them what the warning lexicon is and the FEMA. I'm blanking on the name of the system that'll write your WIA messages for you, but letting them know, well, here's the resources to help you write good messages. They get it all. And it's important because, again, we're incredibly blessed. We have a huge communications team compared to most jurisdictions. At the same time, though, because we're also fairly busy, because we communicate at least via social media multiple times daily, we have to have substantial backup to make sure that we can sustain that rhythm, especially during disasters.
Have you found public education educating the public about the alerts and what they mean has been helpful in getting them to respond?
Yeah, we do that quite a bit. It's really people that, just to get people to understand the difference between an alert and a warning, to get people to understand the difference between, a warning and a watch. Those are big deals, and people do need to understand that. And that is part of our messaging. And a lot of that, when I say we're communicating daily, that's some of the downtime, blue sky messaging. Hey, here's what a watch means. Here's what a warning means. Here's what it means for you. Here's what you need to do. At the same time, especially over the last year, we've spent a lot of time educating people on how to turn on the alerts on their phone. We've even included this in our Ready Harris, emails that go out. There's links to literally the help for Android and Apple so that people can see how you do this on your device. So I think it's really important people understand a little bit about that. I think helping them understand why it's important you stay informed. And you're getting on my other hobby horse right now. And we may touch on this a little bit later, but my sense has been in some of the research I've been doing and some of the things I've been reading is that in almost every major event, whether it was the Central Texas floods, whether it was the LA fires of this year, the information's always been out there. It is always out there. It's almost always broadcast via multiple channels. The biggest question and the thing that I don't have control over is, are you tuning in? Are you putting yourself in a position to get the messaging? And I know it's not fashionable to blame the victims, and that's not where I'm going here, but I think we have to get the public to understand that they have a responsibility to put themselves in a situation where they can receive messaging. I get just shaking angry sometimes when I hear that. No one told me. It's like, well, I don't have a personal messenger to come and give you this. This is not ancient Greece. There's not a runner coming with a scroll. Ultimately, you've got to figure out that you're going to be able, you're going to be paying attention to what's going on some level. And again, it's a partnership with the public. It's always going to be. But right now, we got to start placing a little bit more emphasis on getting them to tune in and understanding why it's in their best interest.
I absolutely agree with you on this. I'm a big believer of, yes, you have to get messaging out there, but it's also the public's job to make sure that they have the medium in place to get that message. So in the case of like the Central Texas flooding, there should have been a staff member that was up that overnight in case somebody had an emergency, that they can listen to that, or they can answer the door when somebody's knocking. I have a medical emergency, or whatever it might be. That should be an automatic. And I think that we've gotten so complacent thinking, well, they'll let us know ahead of time, and it's not going to be something that's going to come out an hour late, an hour after we
Right.
all went to bed. Or just the common sense thing about not putting small children very close to water. I mean,
Absolutely. I think, what I keep hearing from, and I saw a lot of this in the Texas legislature post flood. We had a special session. There were multiple bills proposed, and it's like, well, if we just throw a little bit more technology at the situation, it's like, guys, the tech is there. There's nothing else. We are there,
common sense.
and that's where we're at. And that's the thing. I can't mail that to you. There's no truck dropping off a case of preparedness or alertness to you. This is where everyone has to take some responsibility for their own safety.
And I think you said it earlier before, is people, they just get complacent, and they just think it's not going to happen to them. And if they don't worry about it, then, and it'll be over there. It won't be here. All right. So do you have one lesson that you've learned from using alerts effectively you wish every PIO or emergency manager understood?
That's a really hard one. I have learned so many things over the years. I think the most important thing is you have to be consistent. You have to create your own voice. And that needs to be what people expect and look forward to in a disaster. And, it's just like if you're marketing peanut butter, it's branding, it's reputation. And I think you have to do the same thing with your messaging.
Yep, I agree with that. How do you see the role of the PIO evolving as alert systems become more automated or even data driven, AI driven?
That's a fantastic question. And I'm working with Federal Communications Commission subgroup called CISRIC right now. And part of it is on studying artificial intelligence, specifically as it applies. Part of it is how it applies to emergency alerting and automated alerting. And one of the things that I've kind of discovered in my research is it's entirely possible to have an AI, large language model bot that's going to do your messaging for you. Absolutely possible. Question is going to be, is it desirable? And I think at some point there still has to be a human in that process before the send button is hit to say, okay, is this the appropriate message? Is this the appropriate audience we're sending it to? And, is this the appropriate timing? I'm sure we're going to get to the point where the AI bots are that smart, but we're not there yet. And I think it's important that we make sure that people are still involved in this process because ultimately it goes beyond just sending a message. If I'm sending a message that's telling people to evacuate, because it's the right thing to do. Yes, the bot can learn that. But I want to know if the bot can also make the phone call to the Red Cross to make sure there's a shelter set up that I can direct these folks to. I need to know, what other things that the bot is doing to arrange with, text dot to make sure that the road work is stopped before we do an evacuation. There's just a lot of things, excuse me, involved there that I think you're still going to need, humans to do. So I don't think it's going to go away. Are there gonna be some things that make my life easier? Absolutely. But we can't allow ourselves to get too reliant on technology.
Agreed. All right. Finally, what advice would you give to communicators in in smaller agencies where they don't have the same resources but still need to maintain public attention and trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. Number one, get to know your friends and neighbors. I mean that seriously. Who can help you? And I will say, even in Harris County, with as large as we are, with the access to media and technology that we have, we also spend a lot of time building relationships with community organizations, with churches, because guess what? Those people have trust in their communities. Those people will help you transmit your messages. They will put that stuff out there. They're another communications channel. And I think even if you're the smallest town, if you're the sheriff and emergency management coordinator and the dog catcher, which we have 254 counties in Texas, and some of them have more cows than residents. You get the situation, but take a look at who's around you. Take a look at who your partners are and learn how to leverage what they do to make your job easier. That's the best advice I can give.
Excellent. Brian, is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
I think I answered my own question. I'm, I think the biggest thing that I've been looking at lately is, we talked a little about PIO training earlier, and it's getting a little better. Don't and I've seen this with we do an internship program. We've actually hired a good number of interns. I started as an intern in our office, but one of the things I noticed is we're not teaching people how to write really well at all.
Hmm.
And I think that becomes even more important when you start talking about emergency alerts. I think there's a lot of people that know how to set up a JIC. I think there's a lot of people that understand structure. I think there's less that are teaching, okay, here's how you write a good emergency alert. I can send them all to Dr. Jeanette Sutton and she can teach them how to write an emergency alert. But where's that expertise on the local level? Where's that traveling roadshow? With people who are literally doing a writing class. I think we don't focus as much on that as we need to. I don't think we focus as not enough on teaching people language because words are important. Words mean something. Part of writing a good message is not just putting things in the right order and the right syntax with the comma placed properly. It's also choosing words that adequately convey urgency, that adequately convey timing, responsibility, all of it. So I think, we need to do a better job teaching people to write. I don't think that's going to happen in high school. I don't think it's going to happen in college. I think it's those of us who are practitioners are going to have to make that happen. It's what we try and do in our office, but it's definitely something I'm seeing as an issue.
I'll remember that when we have our after the first of the year, we're going to be reviewing one of the courses for a revamp because it's hit its 3-year limit, and that'll be something that I mentioned when we go through our review of what we need to put in some of the training. 'Cause I think you're right on that. Absolutely. All right, sir. Let's talk about some. Let's lighten this up. Rapid fire questions. You ready?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Phone call, voice memo, or FaceTime. What's your go-to?
It absolutely depends on who I'm communicating with, but please call me. If you're expecting me to check a text, you're probably going to be disappointed.
Streaming binge or weekend read? What's your ideal escape?
Uh, okay, that's a mood thing. So I recently discovered that I had never really watched Mad Men. So I just started binging Mad Men from season one. And the scary thing is, I think I saw the last season, and now I'm going back and watching the previous ones. That's I don't go back to work now till well, it's December 19th. I don't go back to work until January 5th. So I'm gonna see how much of Mad Men I can kill in that time. Having said that, I'm currently reading The Anatomy of the Nuremberg Trials by Dr. Telford Taylor. So I may be doing that while I'm watching Mad Men. Then that's
Wow,
perfect for me.
that's some deep reading there. Holy cow. All right, sir. Morning ritual, sunrise workout, quiet coffee, or news scroll.
I'm scrolling the news. I read 5
If you
newspapers
could
every morning.
Wow. If you could adopt an animal, real or mythical, what would it be?
I have 3 dogs. And one of them was actually back here a few minutes ago. I have fear that there's a 4th one waiting out there for me. I desperately want a blue staffy, but I also enjoy being married. So I don't think those 2 are compatible right now.
Yes, a happy wife, happy life. What's the
Exactly.
one song that always gets you moving?
So my guilty pleasure, it's not my favorite song, but it probably should be. Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley is just one of those things that goes right into my subconscious. It tends to put me in a better mood. It will absolutely make my foot tap. So that's it. That's the one.
Excellent. Teleportation or time travel?
Teleportation. I love to travel, but I'm also impatient. Just saying.
That's good. If you could master a skill overnight, what would it be?
I would know about 10 languages. No, that's it.
Play it safe or roll the dice?
So in the beginning of anything, I play it safe, but I think you also have to know when the dice have to be rolled. It's a multi-phase thing for me, but I'm generally more play it safe until I know what the parameters are.
If you had 48 hours of uninterrupted time, what would you do with it?
So if we have teleportation, I'm going to go spend some more time in Japan. If we don't, I would love going to a Penn State whiteout game.
Nice. What historical figure would you want to shadow, talk to, or interview for a day and not just meet?
So I know this is not a popular figure in modern history, but I would love to spend time with LBJ. I think he is an absolutely transformative figure in our history. And I don't think he gets the credit now for what he did. And I think what he did, good and bad, but he's almost on a par with Lincoln and FDR. Um, and I don't think people now, 60 years later, are able to look at him and realize the scale of what the man did, just on the social welfare side. And then I think the real deep impacts of Vietnam on our society on so many levels. I would love just to have seen him in a meeting. I'd love to see him intimidating people in the way he did. That would just be amazing.
Have you ever heard the LBJ tapes?
I have heard some of them. Yeah, I didn't want to be on the receiving end of the treatment, but I would love to see it being done.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, just to say that. All right. Final thoughts, Brian. What key points you'd like our listeners to take from this interview?
You know what? I think the three things that we need to live by as communicators are consistency, candor, and clarity. We owe our constituents and the officials that we work for those three things. And everything we do should point back towards those three principles.
As we wrap this up, is there a piece of wisdom or a motto that you live by?
Hit the snooze button when you get the first report of something. The first report is absolutely always without fail wrong.
I like that. I like that. Brian, how can people best reach out to you if they want to connect or follow up or maybe get an internship at Harris County?
So you can reach out to me by email, brian.murray@harriscountytx.gov. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, Brian P. Murray. Pretty easy to find there.
Brian, I will add all that in the show notes. I appreciate you coming on, Brian. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, I was glad to be here and enjoyed the conversation.